today's class is, or discussion is going to be a completely different format than you're used to, and is going to be, I think, a very, very interesting time to spend together. In many ways, the students that we work with are experienced trauma, and that can be from a direct event that has happened in your school or community, or perhaps in their family. It can also be just the accumulation of stress and pressure from thinking about what's going on with the environment. I know a number of youth who are grief-stricken by sort of the future that they see and what is happening to the planet. The more that we care about this world, the more the losses hurt. And very often we as educators are ill-prepared to have discussions about these things. And so what we tend to do is to not talk about it, and or kind of give it just a little bit of attention and then move on to the next thing. But having a framework of talking about our grief or sadness, and what do we do in the face of that has been tested and works, I think is going to be incredibly helpful. And that's what we're going to be doing in this class, to give you a sense of the structure of one way, not the only way, but one way that's been tested to be able to do that. And in order to do this, we have a special guest today. Ayesha, thank you so much for being with us and for helping facilitate the event that's about to transpire. In one of our past forums, you touched briefly on an idea that had caught so many people's attention that we decided that this would be a wonderful topic for us to spend a full hour with. And I'm really grateful for you for doing that. Maybe we could just sort of start by giving people a little bit of a kind of just in a get to know you sort of way, a little bit about your background, and then a little bit about kind of how we are going to be the structure of the discussion we're about to have, or what you think would be really appropriate to get this started.
Sure. Thanks, Jack, and everybody else. I know. Thank you for making a whole session available to this. So yeah, my name is Ayesha, just pronounced as 2 syllables for anybody who's been looking at the name and how to say it. So I'm an environmental educator. I've been teaching preschool through 5th grade for about 20 years in public and private schools in San Francisco, mostly through school gardens and field trips. I also consider myself a naturalist and a nature journaler. And I live in the Bay Area. I live in Marin, California, for anybody who's familiar with that. So that's a little bit of who I am. One of the reasons that this came up for me is the school I used to be at. I ended up having to leave, too much stress a year ago. But our school was growing from elementary into middle school, which meant that the students I'd known since kindergarten, I was watching those same children develop more and more awareness and articulation about what was going on. And we had an environmental ed program, and I realized there was absolutely no space for their feelings. And that's actually kind of how the whole school was, which is one of the reasons I left. But it started a dialogue in my head with a few other teachers, a few other environmental educators. So there's this sort of this journey I've been on, partly for myself too. I was having more and more trouble handling my own feelings. How do I keep going in environmental ed and facing these losses? And just, you know, this is all very hard for all of us who are particularly in tune with the natural world. We're really struggling with it. And I started attending workshops myself. I went to day-long events at Spirit Rock, which is a big Buddhist center. It's based in California, but brings teachers from around the world. But they had, for 2 years before the pandemic hit, they were having day-long retreats about specifically addressing climate change and how to keep moving forward. And really bringing that to the forefront of like, we have feelings around this. We can't just keep pretending that it's about taking action or that there's hope or that, you know, we all have feelings about this. And so one of the people who spoke there, as well as somewhere else, was Joanna Macy. And I was really inspired by her exercises because she really says that you have to move through those feelings first to be able to really proceed. And one of the reasons I wanted to share this here is, as Jack was saying, I feel like I have wanted a toolkit if things really start coming up with students, especially students I see on a regular basis. What exercises can I do with them to help guide them through it a little bit and sort of move them through to another step? But as she said beautifully, grief is the other face of love. And just to fill you in briefly on who Joanna Macy is, I can't really do justice to who she is. She's just this incredible woman who is a Buddhist and an activist and has been doing a lot of work around bringing people together, doing extended workshops. I got to do just these, she was doing these brief prompts or open sentences, and we're going to try those ourselves in a few minutes. And she said herself that she would give each of these prompts a lot more time if she could, or if she's doing a longer workshop with different age groups. But we're going to just do experimental 2 minutes each. But what I want to share before I get into what the practices are going to be is just a few words from her book called Active Hope. And I'll put some of this in the chapter later. She says, yet the very act of looking at what we love and value in our world brings with it an awareness of the vast violation underway, the despoliation and unraveling. From gratitude, we naturally flow to honoring our pain for the world. Dedicating time and attention to honoring our pain for the world ensures that there is space to hear our sorrow, grief, outrage, and any other feelings revealing themselves in response to what is happening to our world. Admitting the depths of our anguish, even to ourselves, takes us into culturally forbidden territory. From an early age, we've been told to pull ourselves together, to cheer up or shut up. By honoring our pain for the world, we break through the taboos that silence our distress. When the activating siren of inner alarm is no longer muffled or shut out, something gets switched on inside us. It is our survival response. Our pain for the world not only alerts us to the danger, but also reveals our profound caring. And this caring derives from our interconnectedness with all life. We need not fear it. So I think that's enough of an intro. What we're going to do is the first activity is just going to be a grounding activity, which is where she starts. And we're just going to do this either in the chat box if you want, or in your own personal piece of paper. And we're going to give you about a minute. And this has come up with me with her work, with therapists, with energy workers, is we're dropping into gratitude to ground ourselves, because this is hard work. This is going to be a hard session. So my first prompt, I've written out so many versions. And here's my prompt. And then, like I said, you're going to write your response in the chat or a personal notebook. Some things I love about being alive on Earth are. Go. Some things I love about being alive on Earth are. I'm going to pause us there. It's never enough time. So we're going to stay in that place, try and keep our heart in that place. And Jack is going to divide us into breakout rooms. So let me explain what's going to happen. You're going to be with one other person. And it's going to be partner A and partner B. And for simplicity's sake, we'll call partner A whoever's first name starts with the earlier letter in the alphabet, and partner B later. Just make it fast. So if it was me and Jack, I would start. I'd be partner A. Jack would be partner B. Okay. And then for the second prompt, there, he's ready. For the second prompt, we'll actually switch it. I'm A. And then we'll switch again. Okay. And everybody will get 2 minutes to talk. So what's interesting about this exercise, following Joanna Macy's wisdom on this, is that partner A, say it's my turn. I've received a prompt. You're going to get it over breakout room. It'll just appear. Is when I'm talking, Jack's just listening. He's not saying, I think that too, or adding any commentary. He's just a receiver or a witness, let's use that word, for what you are needing to articulate in there. It is your time. He can nod or smile or cry or whatever reaction, but he doesn't say anything. And when it's his turn to say what he needs to say. He's not responding necessarily to what I said. He can, but it's about what his thoughts are going through his head. Does that make sense? And that's a story catcher. Thank you, Avea. Witness or story catcher, whatever works with the crowd you're working with. I want to say that I've chosen 3 prompts. It's been incredibly, because these are the ones that resonated for me with Joanna, and they're in order, in a particular order. She has sequences. She has so many. And I'm going to share a bunch of others at the end of some others, because you may find others work better for you or for your students, or you try out different things. I went to a workshop where she said she was trying new prompts completely for the first time with that audience. So there's nothing golden about these particular 3, but the sequencing is kind of what she has developed and found that worked.
So for people who are in this room, I just sent out a message to everyone with the first prompt. And what it is when I think about the environmental damage happening in the world, I grieve that. Let's take some time right now in our journals just to do some writing and thinking about that. We do not need to share our thoughts with other people at this time. But we'll be taking some time. You'll probably have about 4 minutes to do some free writing.
we are currently taking 2 more minutes to write about our second prompt, I hope. So what are your hopes? And take some time and let's use that prompt to see what comes out on your page. Hi there, friends. The groups in the chats have now started their third and final prompt, and I want to read it to you. And you can take some time in your own journal to write that in. It is, as I face the future, I will remember that the personal and communal resources I bring to it are. So what are the personal or the communal resources that you bring to the table as we go forward into the future? Let's take some time and write about that. Good to see you all back. I hope that this experience was a beautiful one for all of you. But I'd like to bring Ayesha back to the front here.
Yeah, I would like to share one or two things for a few minutes and then we'll open up. One thing I'd like to do really quickly is just, do you see this page I'm sharing?
Yes, I do.
So we kind of did this model where she calls it 4 stages, and we started with gratitude at the beginning. Then we honored our pain for the world. And we used the prompt, I grieve. Sometimes it's more powerful to use, I fear that. Some of my students said they weren't sad or fearful, they were angry, which reminded me that I needed to open up prompts or give multiple options. And then we moved into seeing with new eyes and going forth through, I hope, and the resources, which are like personal strengths or community strengths. So I just wanted to share that that was the structure that Joanna Macy uses. And then within that, there's a whole bunch of prompts. And I acknowledge that some prompts might not have worked that well for some of you. Some might have been hard, some might have been easy. The time might have felt too short or too long. It's awkward over Zoom. It's very powerful in person. Though even with my Zoom partner, it felt amazing to get a chance to listen and to speak. What I would like to do is open this up for discussion. And then at some point when we get a chance, I'd like to just share some other prompts Joanna Macy has. But as we all know, as educators, it's more beautiful to first think through our own thoughts and that. So is anybody have anything immediately that came to mind or they'd like to share after this experience for them?
If
Jack?
so, please just use the raise hand button, or you can also sort of just put your hand up on screen if you don't see that button. I would also want to acknowledge that this conversation may have been challenging or painful for some people, and I just want to honor the feelings that you are having at this time.
Which actually reminded me, one of the first things I wanted us to do when we all came back together is everybody just please take a very deep breath, like a sigh. And just let yourself come back into your body and the moment as a safe space.
Does anyone have some thoughts or comments that they wanted to share with the community about this experience? How you think it might apply to your students, and or perhaps just about the personal experience that you've had doing it.
Or how you might modify it with your students. This can all be done. Yeah. I'll stop talking.
Let's, Christine, thank you so much for joining us. You can unmute. By the way, I've turned on everybody's ability to unmute, so no Zoom bombing. Hi there.
Hi. Hi. I had the pleasure of being able to chat with Ayesha, and I mean, it was lovely. What I found difficult, though, was not being able to respond and to commiserate and to jump in and say, I get it, I understand, and to just let somebody speak, which goes back to our conversation last week when Billy Joe was talking about listening to listen rather than listening to respond. So that's a wonderful lesson. And I think that's something that could be very beneficial for students as well, on many levels and for many reasons. So thank you for that, for challenging me in that way as well.
Yeah, that idea of no response but witness is really powerful. Puts you in a very different place.
Yeah, I had a similar difficulty when Joanna Macy did this exercise with us. It is a novel experience for most of us. But yeah, we hear a lot more when we stop trying to respond or find similarities or differences. It's amazing. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. I'd like to bring in Brian Higginbotham. Brian, thank you so much for being with us today and participating.
Thank you, and thanks for having the guest on. It was a fascinating little experiment we did here today. So something that I liked about this in particular is something I was exposed to with Braiding Sweetgrass, the book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, where she talks about, when she asks her students, what are the problems with the world, they have a laundry list of things, and then she asks what are some good things that humans bring to the world, and no one can think of anything. So I like this structure of thinking of things that we're grateful for at the moment. I didn't get past opening my door this morning, and I suddenly could think of quite a few things I was grateful for, right? And then going through that and then thinking about things that were problematic, but then areas where there's hope or, forward looking and not just a dismal kind of sad way, I thought was a nice way to think about this challenges that we face. And so I really like the setup for this assignment. And so I just want to share that.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
And having that piece at the end where just thinking about the order of those events. First, to kind of, there was that grief, and then there was, in spite of that, what are my hopes, and looking forward to what do I want things to be like. But then by having that third piece of what are the personal resources that I have and the communal resources, that makes me feel both sort of empowered and not alone in facing that. I think that was a really interesting, deliberate combination of prompts. And without any one of those, it would have been a very different experience to think about this. But by having those three together in that specific order, that was very intentional and very powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she has different prompts for each of those 4 stages. And full disclosure, I picked out of the 4 stages, the ones that resonated most with me personally.
Well done.
Which is why I do want to share some of our others, but I just kept coming back to that last one again and again. And I was like, I remember that helped me so much and has stayed with me.
It also kind of gets us into that planning mode. Like, yeah, I do have these allies. I do have those allies. Instead of I have hope, but I have no way of doing it. But I'm thinking like, all right, like who's on the A team here with us?
Yeah. And even who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? You know, as they say, I don't know who it is who has said something like, why am I here? Why was I born to this time? What do I bring to it? And I can't remember who said something like that, but it just, yeah, it brings that up. Like,
You just did.
Somebody more famous than me said it.
Yeah, but we heard it
I
from you,
repeat it
and
to
it
you.
resonates the same way. Evea, thank you so much for being here. Love to hear your thoughts on this. You do so much thinking about community and stewardship, and you are, in the work that you do every day, embedded in these things. You're the person who brought stewardship to the table of the nature journaling community. Love to hear your thoughts about this experience.
I think that this was important for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that I tend to be very solution oriented and very action oriented. And when it comes to the environmental issues, I don't always slow down to feel the grief. And this helps me remember to be compassionate to other people who might need that space, and to not just immediately hear about fixing it, who might need to really mourn things. And that sometimes there are things that we can't fix. A bit ago, when I was listening to my partner, she was talking about something that I hadn't thought about, that wasn't on my radar. I'd heard about it a long time ago, but I hadn't thought about it. And listening to her just made me want so much to figure out something to do to help in where she lives, and just to make it. The more I hear other people's stories, the more I want to make the world a better place for them. So hearing her, and then I wanted to hear more about what she was thinking, and then hearing the gifts that she shares, that she brings. Some of them are not gifts I have myself, and so just hearing about that, what she does, and it just made me really. My partner was Kiva, and so just hearing about what she does makes me excited, because it's so many different, like such a very different skill than what I have, and one that's a lot more, I think, compassionate towards what her students might be feeling. So she reminded me, just by being her, to slow down and be more in the moment with people, by practice. And that's another reason why I'm so happy that we did this in partners, because then you get to find out somebody else's experience. And when you do, then it gives you one more person that you want to make the world a better place for. So I'm very thankful for this, for the opportunity to care about what other people are going through. Thank you.
That's an amazing perspective. The thinking about that, understanding somebody's story motivates you to also want to make the world a better place for them. That it sort of turns that person from an it to a thou. And it sounds like for you, in a really motivating, powerful way. We're so lucky to have you in our community.
Thank you. It made me realize that there are some things that are going to be lost, even if we protect a lot of other things. And that's sad when that happens. That's going to hurt. At the same time, though, to remember that doesn't mean we're going to lose everything. And so it's kind of finding a way to honor both of those things, being sad about the things that we will lose, and also still work on protecting what we can and being happy thankful for those things that remain. Acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd love to bring Kate in on this discussion also. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Hi, yeah, I guess what really resonated for me was that this is something to, depending on our place, you know, to take students through. You know, I see my daughter and her friends, you know, struggling with climate change anxiety and this sort of thing. And so, you know, holding space for students, but then also holding space for each other, like for the people out there doing the work and caring for the carers, is something that I'm like starting to feel inside myself, is like, how can I help care for the carers? Like there's people, especially, you know, out here, we have a very motivated community that's doing a lot of really great work. And it's this realization that the people doing the work also really need that support. As much as, you know, some people, you know, that there's kind of those two sides of it, right? Where there's like getting, helping students and those kind of like within our care through this process. But then when you are the one kind of absorbing and hearing all those stories and all of those emotions, is how do you care for yourself and how do you help other people who are in that place, you know, of doing that caring for others, and how do you make sure that they don't get burnt out, and how do we make sure that we're not getting burnt out as a people absorbing all of the other people's stories and fears and processing and experiences. So, you know, this is a great framework because it's something I've been kind of looking for, is, you know, how can I help in both of those ways. So thank you for having this.
Ayesha, this is really, really valuable.
Thank you. I'm glad it's really resonating with people. And one of the things that's been coming to mind all morning as sort of I've worked through this is like, I wonder if it would be worth for us as a community to revisit using slightly different prompts, but the same structure, like in a few months, or even to give each prompt a little bit longer as support for ourselves, as Kate is saying. Like this was kind of like targeted at ourselves, but also how would we carry it forth to our students? But what if in a few months we did it again and something similar, but like I said, I think I'm repeating myself now, 4 prompts, but slightly different ones following the same structure.
I'm in.
I'm in since I suggested it. It's helpful to me too, right? I think it makes us all feel less alone in it.
And Clark is also suggesting, you know, just sort of what if we made part of our practice just time at the start of any meeting, just to disappear into small groups and just have a chance to interact with people in this community on a more one-to-one basis. I think that's beautiful. I love both of those ideas. Hey, Brian, could I bring you back in to share that quote that you dropped on us? Because it's not going to show up in the recording, but that I thought was really useful.
Sure, I think this is one of those quotes my mom has like on a magnet, so I've seen it at her house. So the quote's from Edward Hale, who was a writer and during the Civil War period. So he writes, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do."
Could you read that one more time?
I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Can I chime in then with something from Joanna Macy? Very similar. I love it, Brian. Thank you. Her book is called Active Hope. I'll just read part of it. Sorry, Joanna. Active hope is not wishful thinking. Active hope is not waiting to be rescued by the Lone Ranger or by some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We have come a long way and are here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, and comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to engage. Active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love. I feel too upset to read anymore, sorry. It just brings tears to my eyes because the word hope itself is so difficult at this time.
That's so powerful. Hey, Kate, can I bring you back in? Because you were talking to us about, caring for the carers. And something, that's also part of that fabric is the degree to which, we don't realize that we need to take care of ourselves as well. And if we're going to be in this for the long term, how do we help others in this community walk that path? And also, how do we do that ourselves? It's easy for me in my head to kind of get into the mindset of, for my students, this is work that I'm not doing for me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
No, that's a really good point. It's very easy to do the work for others and not do it for ourselves. One of the things that, honestly, I just started therapy again because I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I manage all of these sort of things? But one of the things that I realized is that, she was telling me like, okay, let's do some deep breathing and let's check in with your body and what bodily sensations are you feeling and where are you feeling it and where are you feeling your feelings and how do you take care of that part of yourself? And I just started laughing and she was like, wait, what's going on? And I just was like, this is what I do with my students, like I do this exercise with them sometimes when, they get all zany, it's like, okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's just like be inside of our bodies. Let's be inside this moment. But because I'm so thinking of it, oh, this is something I do for them. I'm like, oh, all right. I needed somebody to tell me to do it for myself. And I think, all of these exercises that we do for our kids and all the things that we remind them and all the ways or whatever age students you have, is say like, how do I also care for myself? That there's a small child inside of me. And sometimes I imagine that like myself as a small child because that's how you feel sometimes when you are grieving. You're not this like big, strong adult with all this experience and education. You're just like this little child, who just wants to be comforted. And as adults, we don't always have someone around to comfort us, that everything's busy and things are going on and we're like literally just alone in the room. And, we don't have, I'll have somebody that we can just go to and, cry on or for whatever reason in that moment. And so how do we provide and show up for ourselves in these ways too, and make sure that like we're a safe place for ourselves? Because it's very easy when you do say like, Brian, I love your quote, but I'm a little anxious about that last line of like, I won't say no to anything that I can do, because there are times where we do have to say like, can I really do this? Like, is this something that I actually am capable of right now? Because I had to cancel a little club meeting that I had because it was just suddenly like my to-do list exploded. Everything was going on. I didn't feel well, like I was exhausted. And I just was at, I can't show up for these kids if I don't show up for myself. And the parents understood, nobody minded. But yeah, like I would never send my kid off to, and so I'm like, I can't do that to myself. And so, and I'm really glad it was definitely the right choice. And I'm so excited about going back this week and I'm energized and it makes, like I'm looking forward to it and I have plans and I didn't before. I just suddenly was like, oh no, we're showing like, there's going to be kids and I'm going to be responsible for them. And I don't even know what we're doing. And I was like in tears and it was just, okay, take a deep breath. Even though I know I could have gone and I know I have things in my back pocket, I could have like, you're always, it's kind of, you can't take a sprinter's mindset. This isn't just one race. This is a marathon. And this is like, I'm like, this is the rest of my life. This is the work that I want to be doing. And so it's not about like pushing yourself to the finish line every single day. You cannot run a marathon every single day. My brother hiked the Appalachian Trail and it almost killed him. He ended up in the hospital. So Giardia is terrible. And then he still got up and he finished the rest of it. And he goes, you cannot do that every single day for the rest. I mean, some people can't, but you know, you have to take care of yourself. And so it's more like, I'm not hiking the Appalachian Trail. I'm not running a marathon every single day. I don't want to do this for 6 months and then burn out. I want to do this the rest of my life. And so what does that look like? What can I really realistically do? And what are the ways that I can take care of myself while I'm doing this really difficult work, and balancing out all these different needs and emotions? You know, like I'm an activist over here, and I'm, you know, like a parent volunteer over here, and I'm a teacher over here, and I'm a mom, and I'm a daughter, and I'm a wife, and I'm, you know, like cat owner, and you know, it's all of these sort of identities, and trying to take care and manage and balance all of it. And you know, I think like coming back to this sort of group and having that sense, like comrades in arms, like I'm not alone in this work, and it's not just me. It's not something that's just on my back. And yes, like I'm going to show up and do the things that I can do, but I can't do it all, and I can't always do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And you know, it just sort of are kind of, you're really shining a spotlight on the idea that kind of self-care that is not selfish, right? That's allowing you to be in the world, to engage with what is real, and to be in it for the long term, and not burn our candle at both ends. I think that is so powerful.
You know, and it's kind of interesting, sorry, going back to our students too, it's like they are children in your case. It's like they can tell, like they feel it when you haven't been taking care of yourself, or that you can't drop into the difficulty around the conversation because you've blocked it so much for yourself. Like I personally started feeling that more and more. The more I pushed it down, the more kind of my interactions with my students suffered at some level, because I was tense about it. I was actually having physical manifestations. My migraines exploded. You know, I wasn't allowing myself to grieve, and that manifested when teaching. You know, it's just kind of all kind of comes popping out in some way.
You know, and the denial approach, I think that has been I do that. You know,
Not all, do we?
Yeah.
Not all.
You know, a friend of mine was talking to me about this sort of intense grief about the planet. And I was sitting there, I was thinking like, wow, I'm really not relating to this right now, although I'm aware of all these other sort of things. And what I think it was just denial and compartmentalism. And, you know, that when, you know, kind of that can provide you some armor for a little period of time, but it's also not sustainable. And if you're going to be in the game and engaged. I'd love to bring Clark in on this conversation. And I see Rebecca also has something to share. I'm going to bring both of you up on the screen as well. Do you want to stick with us a little bit longer, Kate? Okay. So Clark, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, the topic of caring for the carer is quite personal to me, because this has been a struggle that I've definitely, as we all have had for a long time. And one of the things that struck me a while back was that denial, you know, obviously denial is possibly succouring for the short term, but it's not sustainable. But neither is the opposite side of the coin, which is hopelessness and doom. And one of the things that helped me was to realize that my perspective is so narrow. And I'm in the South. I love the Smokies. I love the Southern Appalachians, and it's such a beautiful, rich, diverse. It's my happy place. And yet, if you look at historical pictures of the Smokies, pretty much every single tree was cut in the early part of the 19th or the 20th century. It's the reason why there is a national park, because the land was basically worthless, and the federal government was able to come in and get it. And had I been wandering the mountains in 1910, I would have absolutely felt like it was the end of the world. And not that it wasn't a tragedy, but it wasn't the end of the world. And so I wonder sometimes about my perspective now. What am I missing that might keep me rooted in hopelessness if I missed it? And I think the other thing that I know without a doubt is that I will feel worse about things scrolling on Twitter than I will if I go outside with my binoculars and look at birds. And so I think, I guess it comes awfully close to the definition of faith, but if there is something that I can find some solace in, is that I'm small and my perspective is limited, and I, to some degree, can choose what that perspective is going to be. And I recognize that there are some choices which are not helpful for me or anybody else. And that's, I think, an important thing to realize. Not as a road to denial, because that doesn't work either. But Kate used the word balance, and I think balancing our mindset is just so critical.
That, I love that thought about sort of thinking, realizing that our perspective isn't the whole thing. That can really help us. That I don't have to understand it all, but I'm going to keep working in the middle of this. Can you add to this thought stream, Rebecca?
So I wanted to bounce off of what Kate was saying, just because this whole idea of like, what can I do and what can't I do, and taking care of yourself. This is something that I'm working through right now in myself in a very deep way. I've been thinking about almost constantly over the past few weeks, because as somebody with a chronic illness, and I also am very sensitive, and I feel everything very, very deeply. And it feels like there's always something to be grieving over. And I feel like in the physical sense, my whole life I've kind of just been taught like, oh, just push through, just you've got to do all the things. And then in the emotional side, I feel like I've been kind of was always told like, oh, just buck up, just get over it. And I can't do that. And I've been really trying to pay attention to how much can I actually do, and really honoring the fact that I need rest. I need more rest than the average person. Maybe I won't get as many tasks done in a day, but that's okay. And kind of what I've been noticing is that because I always just push and push through, to the point of getting really burned out, that I've realized I have kind of a disconnect from my body in certain ways. Like, how do I even know how to understand, like, when do I need a break? And when should I say no to things? And I'm just really trying to kind of learn or relearn that, how much can I manage? How much can I take on? How much can I plan for and commit to? And, listening to what do I really need in this moment? What does my body need? At what point should I take a break? And I put in the chat, you know, there's this idea, like people say like to do your best and do what you know, Brian Singer says, do what you can do. But I agree, somebody says if it's really a struggle, that means you can't do it. And that's okay. You know, and like this idea that do your best means the best you can do in that moment. You know, it doesn't, you know, I think there's such this mentality of like, oh, you got to give 110% all the time. And it's like, that leaves nothing left. Like that's literally impossible to give 110% of ourselves. And we should not give 100% of ourselves anyway, because we need something left for ourselves. We've got to live a life. And I don't know, I think like these kind of like beliefs and internalized things that we're kind of operating with are they're very deep. And I've just had this image in my mind lately of if it's like a very deep root that you're weeding and kind of pulling it out of the soil, but then at the same time, this is just an image that's been in my mind lately, you know, this like tapestry of our lives and our beliefs and our thoughts. I'm kind of like removing out this one of, you know, these kind of ideas I was talking about, but then at the same time I'm weaving in this ribbon of this idea of kinship that I was talking about last week, and you know, these connections we have with each other, and you know, seeing ourselves as part of the living world. So what Kate said, I've been dealing with in a very deep way recently, and so I just wanted to share my perspective.
And can I just jump on with that, is that I think, you know, it's that the weed that we're pulling up too is that when we talk about environmental issues and climate change issues, what we've been told, like since I was, you know, small kind kid, is that it is on us. Like it's on you. You need to recycle and you need to buy the right products and you need to do all these individual things. And you're the reason that the turtles are dying. And that is the message that's been going out. And as environmental educators, we know that's not true. We know you can look at the facts, you can look at the evidence, and you're like, it's not just on me. This is, you know, we have this plastic patch in the Pacific Ocean that's washing up on our, you know, uninhabited islands. It's not my trash that's going out there. You know, that's trash from the entire world. And so it's that interconnectedness of the problem, but it's also this interconnectedness of the solution. And I think coming together in these sort of places, and like, you know, what Joanna, you know, Macy is talking about, is coming together and saying like, it's not just on me. That's not how it works. It's not just on me that it's my fault. And it's not just on me to solve it either. And that's what Clark's talking about too. It's this larger perspective, that there is some degree of time, that there's these larger things that are at play, and there's a larger groups that are at play. And so finding any sort of way of reaching out and making, because Rebecca, you've like inspired me so much, you know, and like hearing from you and like everybody in this community, and it's spiraling outwards. And it's, you know, like you're talking about pulling up weeds, you know, and the trees have that communication network underneath the soil, you know, and they all support each other and they give nutrients back and forth. And looking at it more that way, instead of like, I have to give 110%, it's how do I participate in this community in a really full way, and my personal community and the online international community in a really full way, and trust that there's going to be times where my tree is pulling a little bit more and when my tree is giving a little more. And so, you know, that's, yeah.
Sorry, I think about that a lot, especially in terms of like when I do writing workshop Wednesdays. Sometimes people come and they're like, wow, this was amazing. And they share these like incredibly personal things sometimes. And sometimes I feel like I didn't really do anything. But I think a lot also about this, you know, how it's like the mycorrhizal fungi and the trees, and some like when the tree is sick, one of them sends it the energy, because it's not just I'm one person sending my energy and my knowledge and everything out to other people. It's like, how do we together create the conditions for this whole network? And it's like we all take turns. When somebody needs support, we send them support. When somebody else is, you know, has something to give, then you can share a little more. But it's like, yeah, it's like a relay, you know. We don't all have to be on all the time, and we can all be here for each other.
what you said about the problem and the solution are interconnected. That's a little mic drop moment. Yeah, that's it's interesting for me to see how much I needed to open this conversation for me, and to be thinking about things that I wasn't. I sort of went into this thinking about this would be really, if you're like, go back and you play the introduction, I think I was talking about like, this would be really good for our students. This journey, this path, we're, as a community, we're figuring this out together. And I'm really honored that all of our voices and ideas are coming together to help us, as you were saying, Rebecca, kind of be that tree that's, you know, supporting the other one sometimes, and sometimes getting support. Ayesha, you cracked open something really powerful today. And this is, it is a conversation that deserves so much more. I wish we were all on a retreat together and they were just sort of having this conversation around the campfire on the first night. And we're gonna have like the rest of our time to start unpacking this and exploring it more. I know that there are a number of people who are in this meeting who have, they can kind of come to a short meeting and then we have to go. So we will be kind of pulling this to a close shortly. But I just want to honor and respect all the ideas that people have shared in this discussion. Evea, could we bring you back on? Would that be okay? I just wanted to find out if you had any other thoughts, and you also said you had a poem that kind of relates to what we're looking at here. But maybe before we do that, I first wanted to sort of reach out to the community. If there's something that is in your heart right now that hasn't been said that you want to share with us, we'd like to invite you to do that at this time. I also want to say that if there's something that has been shared in this workshop that you feel is really personal, and felt right in the context of the discussion with this community right here, but doesn't feel comfortable for you to be kind of out on YouTube, just shoot me an email and we won't post this one. But if you do feel comfortable with that, then we will be doing that. But it's more important for us to actually hear from you and to be in conversation with each other than to post something on YouTube. We want to keep this a safe place.
And I can guess before Evea closes us out with her poem, I also just thank you everybody for participating and for giving me the chance to share this and share these exercises. It's been very important to me to start bringing in these pieces for myself and to find a community that welcomes it. It's you all, so thank you. This is the first time I have shared these with somebody else. So it's been really good for me to just feel less alone and try to sort my way through this.
If you wish to, after this workshop is over, let's the two of us be in communication about next steps. If this conversation wants to have a place to be extended.
That sounds great. That sounds great. I can imagine giving a little bit more time in breakout rooms for some of these prompts and let people dive in a bit deeper for themselves. Okay.
Maybe before we do, let's
everybody take, yeah.
I want to invite everybody just to take a few kind of deep and clearing breaths, and then Evea, I'd love to hear what's on your mind and your heart, and any poem that you wanted to share with the group.
Thank you. And thank you to Ayesha for creating this space for us today. Thank you so much. So this poem, I thought of it because Rebecca had quoted something by Audre Lorde in the chat about self-care. And it reminds me that this is one of my favorite poems by her, and it's about grief. And I guess the wisdom behind that is that, like what Rebecca was saying about us being pressured to just keep going and to push through, that can be difficult when we need time to mourn. And tears are not necessarily a burden. They can be a healing. They can be a way of releasing all of that pressure that builds up inside of us. And they don't, sometimes they hurt, sometimes you feel better afterwards, but they're necessary for the human experience. So here is the poem, and it's called If You Come Softly by Audre Lorde. If you come as softly as the wind within the trees, you may hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. If you come lightly as threading dew, I will take you gladly, nor ask more of you. You may sit beside me, silent as a breath. Only those who stay dead shall remember death. And if you come, I will be silent, nor speak harsh words to you. I will not ask you why now, or how, or what you do. We shall sit here softly, beneath 2 different years, and the rich earth between us shall drink our tears. Thank you for listening. Wish I could give you all hugs. Love you all.
Thank you, dear friends. Be well, be kind. I am so empowered to be in this community with you.